This is It Matters, the show that digs beneath the surface of our political landscape, pop culture, and the 2024 election. I'm your host, Michael Starr Hopkins. This is It Matters. Let's dive in. All right, today we've got Rachel Bitecofer. Rachel's the author of Hit 'em Where It Hurts, How to Save Democracy by Beating Republicans at Their Own Game. I've got to say, it is one of the best political books I have read in the last couple years. For people who have listened to the show, you guys know how much I criticize Democrats about needing to punch back and punch harder. And Rachel's book is the blueprint on how to do that. Rachel, how are you?
As good as one can do, you know?
I mean, you predicted the blue wave in 2018. You saw kind of what was going to happen in 2020 and 2022. How are you feeling? Because I know I wake up with a cold sweat every night.
I mean, the stakes make that unavoidable, guys. All right. So let me tell you, I mean, here's the thing. It's like, I don't sell hopium and I don't sell doom, right? But I deal in lead. I deal in data. Go. Okay.
The real stuff.
And what made me, I just want to take a step back so people kind of get a sense of who I am and what I'm bringing to the table. So the reason I was a good forecaster and analyst is because I'm a trained PhD credentialed political scientist who studied political behavior in campaigns and elections academically, okay, which is a very different perspective than the practitioner perspective, okay? And like why I even got into forecasting was my frustration that Nate Silver and Wasserman and, the big named analyst Cohen didn't seem to understand political behavior, especially the role of partisanship and especially the role of partisanship in a polarizing environment. So really they weren't accounting for polarization at all, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what made me look like a genius. And I'll tell you why. It kind of skips forward to the book a little bit, but the front half of the book is about convincing people why they need to make the strategic shift that I'm arguing for. Mm-hmm. Okay. And it does so by proving some basic points of the electorate. The first is that since 1957, we have known, poli-sci has known this horrible basic truth about the American voter. It knows nothing. It's like Jon Snow, okay? It knows nothing. It's all the president and their partisanship, and that's why party is so important in our elections. It was always important. It was always the most reliable predictor of who somebody would vote for, even for most so-called independents. So we have, 33 or 35% of a survey sample that says they're independent. Well, smart pollsters know now, sort out the leaners, those who say I lean Republican, I lean Democrat, and put them into the party camps because there's no fucking difference. Right? There's no difference, right? And so, it is always true that partisanship was going to be the major explanation to explain the variance of vote choice. But in the polarized era, that has ticked up and up and up. And we're talking about since 2004 for the polarized era of American politics, okay? Mm-hmm. And now, I mean, I don't need to know anything about you. You could be a black dot, okay? I don't know if you're man. All this demo shit that you hear analysts focus on or even consultants and campaigns focus on, right? The reason why political science is interested in the demos is the demos predict party and then party predicts vote choice perfectly, okay? so like the be-all, end-all isn't the demographics, it's the partisanship of the electorate, right? And I end up looking like a genius, but here's the truth of the matter is when you use that methodology, you have eliminated 90% of the uncertainty of who someone's going to vote for, okay?
Is there any uncertainty anymore? I mean, people keep talking about these mystery voters who were Obama voters twice, right, and then Trump voters. Right. And there's this idea among Democrats that somehow we're going to win back these unicorn voters. You talk about this a lot in your book.
I do want to talk about that because when I said the polarized era comes in 2004, what political behaviorists who have studied this institutionally and long-term and systematically can bring to the table is the acknowledgement and the realization that actually the two-party coalitions are always under flux, okay? But the most recent realignment, de-alignment started when the Civil Rights and the Voting Rights Act were passed in the 60s in the South, okay? 40 million people who either are Republicans or lean with them will tell you with a straight face 4 or 5, just absolutely untrue reality basis things. Joe Biden stole the election. Joe Biden is a pedophile. COVID vaccines kill people, but COVID was a hoax, right? Like, we are really talking about like a mass psychosis event, right? Read the book so that you will understand why we need to make the change, and that the change that I'm arguing about is not in the branches of a tree. Okay, it is the roots. I'm saying you have to root and branch our whole strategy, because it's based on a flawed assumption. And that assumption is that the electorate is informed and engaged. It is neither of those things. Okay, Republicans get that. We do not. And if we don't get it by the fall, we're going to be in a world of hurt. Voters do not read or watch any news. They do not know. They know there was an insurrection thing at the Capitol. Maybe they've heard it was a peaceful protest or, a tour. Okay. And they know that. They don't know that that was part of a coup plot. They don't know anything about fake electors. They don't know anything about the DOJ being asked to put out a fake letter about election fraud. They don't know any of these things. What is the one topic that Republicans definitely don't want to talk about in 2024?
I'm going to go with abortion.
There you go, friend. Okay. Yeah. That's the one damn thing they don't want to talk about. So we should be hammering them on freedom, limited government. They've padded the pile for us on big government and limited government overreach. Yeah. So we can talk right into that frame and freak people out in the burbs and the ex-urban voters about Republicans coming for them with a national abortion ban.
Yeah, and it's not just a national abortion ban. I mean, they're talking about limiting access to contraception, limiting access to IVF. What is it about messaging around abortion that Democrats haven't tapped into yet? Like, is there still more room to grow in polling?
Oh, God, yes. Dude, there's millions of women right now living in these red states that have no idea abortion's been banned. Okay?
How? And then I know you say they're not informed.
I know. So, that's why, when I wrote the book, I knew I had to lay out the why in that front half, okay? But I thought, people would be able to internalize it. And I'm not judging you, because, Michael, you're no different than anybody else,
Absolutely.
Right? You've read the book, you've listened to me for a few minutes. I've reminded you about how people don't pay attention to the news, but we can't quite make that next step to internalize what that means, right? And so because you're shocked when I tell you millions of women have no idea that abortion's been banned, let alone to be able to make the connection Republican Donald Trump abortion ban. Okay. So for brand identification, and we see this in issue ownership polling all the time. When you ask voters who's good for the economy, they say Republicans. Now, they've destroyed the economy in 2008. They stood in the way of really good response until Biden got into office for COVID, right? It is a demonstrable fact that actually Republicans are bad for the economy. If you were paying attention, you would know that, but you're not paying attention, right? Yep. So, there are millions of people that walked in and voted for the Republicans in the North Carolina Senate race, the Florida Senate race, the Ohio Senate race, and the Wisconsin Senate race, and they never once heard of this basic fact about the Republican. MAGA extremist coming for you. There's probably a million people that cast a vote for J.D. Vance, and they have no idea that he's a fascist misogynist, okay? No idea. And if you want people to know that about your opponent, then damn it, you're going to have to tell them, and that means you're going to have to devote 70-80% of your budget, where you're the only person that has paid ads, okay? Because nobody else has any money. The money goes to the campaigns. And we need the campaigns to be hammering MAGA extremism if we're going to survive this fall.
When I started out my on-air work, I was the black Democrat at Fox in 2017 till about 2019. So it was a special place to be.
I'm sure it was.
I had never really spent a lot of time watching Fox, as I'm a Democrat, and I don't really, want to participate in just random shitty fake news.
Yeah.
It amazed me, the just difference in coverage. You talked about right-wing grifters and how they all have a million followers. There were people in that ecosystem who I had never heard of, who were big deals, $1 million contracts, going on speaking tours. And I was like, who the hell are you? It's an entirely different world. What is the power of that right-wing ecosystem? And why don't Democrats have anything similar?
Dude, it has us down. I mean, guys, we are 5.5 months. I am not kidding. 5.5 months from seeing people like Liz Cheney have to flee the country for their safety.
100%.
Okay, that's where we're at. Okay, so like it is frustrating. That like the urgency has to be there, right? And if we get the chance, even if because we won every battle up till now, but the war can be determined on battle final, and battle final is Donald Trump going back into the presidency and using that power through Project 2025, which have already laid out how they're going to do it, and consolidate more power in the executive and really end federalism as we know it, guys. So we have to make sure that we are hitting that hard and making sure that the tuned out people of America, if we don't tell them there's an emergency going on, they're going to be focused on inflation and gas prices, okay? It is, very much the case that we have to set the terms of the stakes of the election. Right?
Yeah, when I would be sitting in the green rooms kind of like watching the coverage waiting to go on. It would be unnerving because every other segment is this immigrant is raping or killing your kid. This immigrant's going on a killing spree. These black people are robbing your neighbor and cities are burning down. And it was just this like horrific, really dark feeling. And then I'd look out the window into Midtown Manhattan and be like, yeah, it's a beautiful day outside. What are they talking about? And all the anchors live in New York, in DC, in the suburbs of McLean. Like, for all their talk about how horrible all these liberal places, every single one of them lives in these liberal places.
And likes it too.
Yeah.
And likes it too. Because they like all the amenities of liberalism. They never admit it. Right?
Yeah. Like Yale, Harvard, Stanford, all the ivory tower institutions that they then shit on.
High-end restaurants and the elite life that they're
Diplomat.
I came from Grateful Dead tour. I promise you there's nothing elitist about me, right? So, it's all bullshit. But here's the thing is they understand the basic. They have no trouble accepting this thing that liberals are so like internally like resistant to, which is, again, voters know nothing, okay? Voters know nothing. If you don't believe me, get out of your friend network because maybe your friends are just like you. So if your life is in New York City or Virginia or the Beltway or something like that, then yeah, what I'm saying may not sound reasonable, but I'm here to tell you, when a political event happens and you look at the Google search data, it all comes from New York and DC. Okay?
Absolutely.
It almost all comes from New York and DC. Outside of the Beltway, nobody knows what you know, and they will never know if we don't pay to tell them through our paid advertising strategies.
Project 2025 is on the website. Yeah. It is not hidden. They are running on it. Can you talk for a second about Project 2025 and Stephen Miller
happy to.
And just how evil and insidious it is?
Yes, I'm really happy to. So, I was editing the book, the final copies of the book, and I mentioned, because I lay out this asymmetry problem that we have, and most of it's because they have 5 or 20 billionaires that have invested and built all this different infrastructure for 30 years, right? And, I mentioned the Heritage Foundation's manual for leadership in, how it got implemented into the Reagan administration is the manual that brought us Reaganomics and the entire Reagan revolution, okay? And so I reread the line and I'm like, ooh, I wonder if these crazy motherfuckers have actually put this fascist autocracy shit, the Steve Bannon world, into the manual for leadership. So I ordered a copy of it, okay? and
so you're on their mailing list now.
Yeah, for free, free. A book that's like this thick, it's 1,000 pages for free because that's how much money they have. They sent it to me, okay? So, for free. So I open up the book and start reading and holy shit. I mean, it is from page 1. This is how we're going to collapse the separation of powers system. When the courts get outraged, that's okay because there's no enforcement mechanism for the courts, so we can ignore the courts. Yep. It is a manual. It's a transition manual to autocracy, folks, and it's all in writing by the biggest names in the Republican world, not just MAGA, not original MAGA people. We're talking every Republican that's still involved in the Republican Party.
And the Peter Thiels of the world and these really evil...
detailed directions, it's not some move on memo, okay, that's never gonna even make it into the door at the White House. It is an actual transition guide that will go in with Trump and any Republican, but Trump especially, and is going to start getting executed day one. So if you don't believe me, please just Google Project 2025 PDF, because there's a PDF version that you can pull up and you can read it yourself, and you will understand then why I am so strident about the strategic shift we have to make, because we needed to make it 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And now we are at the final countdown. There will be no do-over. So we have to do it right this time.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that Project 2025 include are the rounding up of 30 million undocumented immigrants and putting them into created pens, basically. Converting things like RFK Stadium in DC into a holding cell and putting undocumented immigrants into them. It's making people register their pregnancies so that then it can be tracked. It's firing and the dismantling of the federal government of millions of federal workers.
Going in, they have a database, by the way, that they have advertised, and it's still there, where you go in as a young Republican and you apply to be in this queue. So when they come in, they're going to do an executive order, and they're going to basically fire all the merit civil service employees who won't swear a loyalty oath to Donald Trump. Okay, it's very Nazi-esque. Okay, and then they have a data bank, and if you want to get in the data bank, there's questions they want to know, and they're litmus test questions. Right now, if you want to work at the RNC under Lara Trump, this is also the test you have to pass. And the very first question is, did Donald Trump win the election in 2020? And your only right answer is yes, okay? Because they don't want anybody in. And, I'm telling you now, it's not going to be a Nikki Haley vice president, okay? Donald Trump has one thing that he's looking for in his next vice, and it is somebody who will ignore when he starts to collapse the constitutional republic. He is not going to have another sincere conservative who actually believes in the Constitution get in his way like Mike Pence did, okay? Because as crazy and ideological as Mike Pence is, he was still a constitutionalist. That will not happen again. So our only hope is to save ourselves. And, again, the price is going to be massive. Think about the dreamers, will you? I mean, here we tell the dreamers, sign up on this list and get into the system so that, you have this quasi-legal status. These are people, some of these kids have
come out from the shadows was the famous line.
Never been to Venezuela, right? They have never known anything but America, and they're age 16 or 18 now or whatever it is, right? Well, now Trump's got a whole data bank to go raw. You guys, they're not going to let the dreamers stay. Okay, so if you're in a state especially a state with a Latino population like Texas, Florida, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, right? You should be pounding this hard. I mean, you can't round up 30 million people. Nazi Germany learned this, okay? Yeah. There's a logistic problem, okay? You can't deport 30 million people, or
where
even
do you
11,
send them?
let's just say 11 million, okay? Or even 5 million. Where do you send them? There's no humanitarian way to execute that. That is why, even though Ronald Reagan wasn't a fan of illegal immigrants, he just naturalized them all, because there is no humanitarian roundup. And it's not about, telling these communities what to think. What I'm telling you is these communities are no different. We're all focused on differentiation on our side. It's all identity politics, okay? Well, there's no difference. Latinos don't watch the news. Black voters don't watch the news. Gay voters don't watch the news. Women don't watch the news. I could go on and on. So if we want Latinos, American Latinos, to understand that they're going to be forced to prove who they are. They're coming for birthright citizenship. So if you're a first generation citizen and your parents were illegal, don't get comfortable. Because Donald Trump is very clear that he might revoke retroactively that. And then, someone will say, well, that's unconstitutional. And I'm like, all you got to do is suspend the Constitution, dude. To suspend the Constitution, I've studied the rise of totalitarians, but especially the Nazis intensively for 3 years. There's only two things you need, guys, to collapse a government. It doesn't matter if it's a new government or an old one. It's the same thing. You need a person willing to do it and a supporting cast willing to let him get away with it. Donald Trump has both, okay? Like everyone that's advocating for Donald Trump right now, they know what they're advocating for. They understand that. That's why they're all willing to say the trial was a sham and it was a witch hunt. And, even supposedly serious people like, Mitch McConnell, right? They know that that's it. And now they're just trying to protect themselves because they don't want to be purged after they're done with us. Okay?
Yeah, and that's kind of my big thing, because you're watching people humiliate themselves and say things that they know aren't true,
Right.
all for, pecuniary gain, or all for access. But it also does feel like we're headed into this Nazi-esque unraveling. Is it hyperbolic to draw those parallels between,
No,
Hitler's second, after he came out of prison, and his rise, to what's going on potentially
Here,
now?
let me tell you, I started my study of totalitarianism a little over 3 years now, and I started pretty big macro. I wanted to understand all these 20th century totalitarian movements from the left and the right. How did they all happen? Blah, 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 blah. And then I started to look specifically in Germany. And I'll tell you what I wanted to learn from that was that I wanted to see that it can't happen, that actually there's a big difference, that obviously clearly this can't happen, blah, blah, blah. It's the exact opposite. It's the exact opposite, guys. Like we are already
Perfectly
in a
made.
pot that is boiling. It's almost hit boil. We don't even know it because it's been incrementally increased on us, right? So it is not hyperbolic because, again, Donald Trump on his website, right on his website, Agenda 47, go read it. Go Donald Trump campaign, Agenda 47, in his own words, talks about seizing control of the Department of Education, eliminating it, okay? Eliminating the Department of Education. Now, why? It's not because they think schools should have local control, guys. It's because the federal government requires certain behaviors out of school districts to get federal funding in terms of, equality and diversity and all these other things. That's what they're coming for, okay? They want to control the schools, and he's very clear, and he's going to change the curriculum of the schools so it's all pro-America. Now, that's not pro-America how you and I hear it. It's MAGA America, guys. So, this, it's clearly not. And then, I will say one more thing. I got a lot of shit back in 2020. Through the summer, they started flying around the country. Arana McDaniel, Trump, Bill Barr, the AG, visiting Michigan, Pennsylvania, all these things. The state legislators okay, well, what can we do? Well, let's pass legislation at least that make it you can't count the mail-in ballots, because they first tried to just make it so you couldn't vote by mail in a pandemic, right? But when that all failed, they're like, okay, you can't count the mail-in ballots till nighttime because they were hoping a really close election. Right? This is their original plan. It's going to be very razor close, and then they can shit on mail-in ballots and kind of weed away, right?
Yeah.
Well, it ends up being too big of a margin for them to make the argument of fraud, right? It's too big, but they still go forward with the argument, okay? And it was very clear to me, starting in July, they are not going to transition power peacefully, because either they're going to win and have it, or they're going to lose and they're not going to leave office peacefully. And I got poo-pooed. Oh, that can never happen. Roe will never get repealed. At some point, you have to understand the common thread, and this is kind of tying all this thread together here. When I studied all these regimes, right? Here's the common thread. Humans are designed evolutionarily to have a strong bias optimism. Okay? Very strong. So I'm not saying you, Michael, but generally, your opinion that, it can't happen here, or this can't get that bad, or there's checks and balances, that's not an interesting take. That's the expected hot take to have in this situation. Collapse societies one after the other. That was the collective wisdom. Okay. So there's nothing unique or edgy about it. Here's how strong optimism bias is. Okay. So in Germany, we have 0.7% of the population of Germany is Jewish, by the way. Okay. What Adolf Hitler does is he defines every ail that German people are facing as a product of the Jews who are communists. Communists and Jews hand in hand, and all the Jews are they control everything and 0.7% of the population. I've read diaries from Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto in Poland, okay, because they invade Poland and they come after the 3 million Jews there with a vengeance, okay? And the first thing they did was they took their businesses away. It's called Aryanization. So they took their business away and gave it to a Gentile. Then they took their apartments away. Many of these guys were very wealthy, took their apartments away, herded them into a ghetto. Then they made them build a wall around the ghetto. And now you don't have access to food because you're walled in. So people are dying. And there's children, people, old people. You're walking across children's corpses to go to your job in the Warsaw Ghetto. And you start hearing rumors. Oh, now they're deporting people east, and we're pretty sure that what that means is you're killed. You're deported somewhere and murdered, okay? And still, in their diaries, optimism bias. Still, okay? So it's not a shock to me that people are resistant. What we have to do is something that no one's ever done before. We have to panic while there's time to fix it, because by the time it is obvious that you need to panic, it is too late.
Even if we survive this election and Trump isn't elected, though, I mean, there is a whole nother round of more disciplined, more, I think, fascist leaders. Among them, like you talked about, J.D. Vance, you got the Tom Cottons of the world, the Josh Hawleys. What do we do even if we survive Trump? I mean, the next group that's coming behind is just as dangerous, if not more.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more dangerous, though, than any one of those individuals with the powers of the White House, especially in this country where we apparently lionize the presidency to the point where we think it's unusual to charge them for blatant criminal activity. Okay. Yeah. So like that, but here's the thing. Again, I deal in data. I deal in lead. I'm not a hopium person. I'm not a doom person. I'm just a realist here to tell you what's really going to happen. Either we lose and we collapse into a fascist theocracy, the likes of which the world has never seen, and we hand by far the world's biggest military apparatus over to a bunch of authoritarians who probably will reintroduce colonialization, okay? Yeah. It's going to be a shit show. But if we win, it's still not going to be great, guys. We might see a secession movement from these southern states. We've opened this podcast kind of talking about realignment. MAGA loves to hit this shit on Twitter. Oh, it's the Democrats that did segregation. The Democrats that did slavery. Well, it's white conservatives. Yeah. And the white conservatives are the base of the Republican Party right now, right? And I am not certain that we won't see states try to succeed. And the way that the Civil War started is very similar to that because, Lincoln, he wasn't even inaugurated as the beginning of the secession process begins. He is, he understands, I am taking an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, and that requires to hold the Union. So really, the response of the North is initially about preventing disunion so that Lincoln is obeying his oath of the take care clause of the Constitution, right? And they don't let the southern states succeed. Mm-hmm. I don't know what's going to happen. That's why I'm telling you guys, though, whatever happens from Trump losing, it will not compare in severity, whatever it is. I mean, even if there's violence and death, it will not compare to what will happen to everybody if he wins.
What role do you think TikTok and social media in general is going to play in?
I mean, obviously we need to be on TikTok, right? And you can see the power of TikTok because I've talked about how it's been used to radicalize American progressives into some pretty scary shit. I mean, a lot of it is very anti-Semitic. It's based on the flawed idea that somehow, the Jews just showed up and were like, hey, we want to live here. It's not their ancestral homeland. Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's so crazy, but it also shows you with the right money and influence and the right social media strategy, you can shape a lot of public opinion. And we know MAGA is going to be doing it, folks. So the question is, what are we going to do? And I was absolutely shocked. I'm like, what do you mean? You're not going to get on TikTok because Chinese? Oh, are you fucking kidding me? And here's the thing, you work in as a consultant, as a strategist, and there's probably people that listen to this that do. So you know how hard it is to get an ad into the eyeball of somebody. Yeah. The youth vote has always been a huge issue because they don't watch TV. They're busy. They're going to parties. They're having fun. Mm-hmm. And now we have a tool that we've never had before. We can beam right into young people's brains directly. And then we're not going to use it, dude. And we're not going to use it, right? So like my life goal, is to have a massive digital infrastructure in place that is pushing hard, our brand up, their brand down. Because again, we're in a situation, and you've pointed it out, this is a wildfire that we face in November. It threatens to burn the whole city down and take us all with it. But it is part of a climate change problem, okay? And that climate change problem is the Hawleys and the Cruzes and the embedded MAGA extremism, right? We have to be already thinking about day next, right? And what we're going to do to contain that radicalism. And the only way we can do that is we have to fix the biggest problem in American politics, which is that we have cultured people to not only not like politics, but to feel morally superior by not engaging in the system, okay? Yeah. And that's going to take generational work to do. I have some ideas of how to do that, but social media is going to play a very big role in it. It's about maximizing the probability of winning. Read the book, Hit 'em Where It Hurts. The reason Absolutely. Jamie Harrison and Ken Martin, who's the Association of State Democratic Committee president, bought 3 copies of this book for every state party committee, okay? And are running around telling everyone to read it is because they understand how important it is that every campaign with a paid budget, a budget to do paid advertising, maximizes their message and is running against MAGA extremism. If you aren't doing that, we're gonna lose. You're gonna lose, but we're gonna lose because your loss is our loss in this country right now. So my great wish is that we, wherever there are swing races, we are layering them up and we're wedging MAGA extremism, especially on the issue of Dobbs, because there are many people who don't yet know what and I guarantee swing voters are going to be like, wait a minute, they're life fighting women out of Idaho to Oregon because they can't get medical care? Like that, you know what I mean? So it's in every state. Florida has their ban now. Texas has theirs. There's a woman there that has been medically tortured by the Republican Party of the state. Make it, a personal testimonial. That's what Republicans do so effectively in their ads. And we just get caught up on we want to be there's no fucking accuracy award. Okay. You don't go to the pollies and get an award for the most accurate campaign, okay? There's no accuracy award. People don't understand. I know how Social Security works, okay? I understand that when I say Republicans are going to steal your Social Security, that technically that's not true, not because they aren't going to steal it. They are going to steal it, but because technically you're paying in for the previous generations and people who aren't, they're going to be paying for us. I get that. People don't get it, dude. Don't worry about it. Just tell them Donald Trump is going to steal your Social Security. Okay, 5th grade level shit, meet the electorate where it is.
Rachel Bitecofer, author of Hit 'em Where It Hurts, How to Save Democracy by Beating Republicans at Their Own Game. Everyone needs to go out. This is essential reading, especially right now. Go to your nearest, small bookstore or Amazon or wherever. Go pick up the book. It's an amazing read. Rachel, thank you so much for coming on the show.
It was a great conversation, Michael. Thanks for having me.
This was such a great conversation, and we would love to have you back again for the election.
Yeah, let's do it, dude.
Let's do it. Thanks for being with me today. Share this episode with others. Like and review it. And please keep learning all you can so that you can make an informed voting decision this year. Come back next week for more Truth in Politics. I'm Michael Starr Hopkins, and this is It Matters.